What is the strangest, creepiest thing that has happened to you that left you saying, "What the hell was that?" Went camping with school. Stayed in a fairly nice campsite in the woods. The very first night, about 6 of us shared a big tent and were all laughing and joking as kids do. Then, one of the lads suddenly says, "What the fuck is that?" with a genuine look of horror on his face. So we rush to his side of the tent and peer out into the darkness toward the big communal campfire, and I shit you not, all 6 of us saw what I can only describe as a pair of white legs, no upper half, walking around the campfire before vanishing. We were in shock for a while before we all collectively just laughed hysterically whilst crying inside. Still to this day, I have no idea what we saw. It genuinely looked like a pair of white trousers just walking around. On Christmas, I had a dream that an ex-boyfriend I hadn't spoken to in several years was holding my hand. When I woke up, I was laying on my back with my hand above the covers. I always sleep on my side under the blankets, and I could still feel his hand holding mine. It was like a cartoon, where the character falls as soon as they look down. I felt his hand holding mine as plain as day, as real as the bed beneath me. But the moment I looked, I couldn't feel it anymore. It creeped me out for a few days and I couldn't get over it, so I tried to get a hold of him. His social media was inactive, so I shot his mother a message. He had taken his life a week before, and I was in his note. I hadn't heard from him in years and hadn't been thinking of him for any particular reason. Had I not had that dream, I wouldn't have made it to his memorial or seen what he'd written me. Bittersweet, creepy, interesting. At the time, I never really thought much of it because of my age. When I was around 8 to 9 years old, we used to live in a semi-detached house where the stairs were by the left side of the house and the neighbor's home was to the right, important for later. Another important fact was that an old guy used to live there and unfortunately passed away. I made friends with the neighbor's kids because we realized we went to the same school. One day I was walking up the stairs whilst knocking my knuckles against the wall playfully like any child would. I heard someone knock back, and at the time I was young, so I assumed it was the neighbor's kid knocking from the other side. I knocked again and heard the wall knock back. It wasn't until I recalled the memory and floor plan that the neighbor's house wasn't aligned with the stairs. The other side of the wall I knocked on was plain land. This happened back in the mid-80s. My sister's ex-boyfriend and I, we were friends. They were still on friendly terms as they shared a child. Were driving home from San Bernardino. We were traveling west on Interstate 10. It was around 8:30 p.m. or so. We both noticed a really bright light looked sort of like flames to our direct right. There were fields to our right. We felt a little rumble. Then we saw, both of us, although I was also driving so had to be careful, a missile or something literally fly up into the sky from the ground. We weren't drunk or high. We were just surprised. We saw other people looking over to the right as well from their cars. 2 cars actually pulled off the freeway to the side. I was scared shitless. I told him to put it on the news stations. I told him try KFWB. He did, and he was near tears. We seriously thought we were going to war or something. Finally, we put it on another station. We were still on the freeway, and we stopped on KISS. And they were actually talking about it, but didn't have any specific details on it. Maybe a minute's worth of talking about it. We finally got home and busted in the house, telling everyone what we saw. And I turned the TV to one of the main stations, hoping for a special report to break in. He went and turned on the stereo to the news station. Nothing. No reports other than the small snippet from KISS FM. We searched newspapers, watched news, listened to news for the next week. Nothing. We both absolutely saw this, as did other people on the freeway, but nothing was ever spoken about it after that. The time I visited a nursing home with my friend so she could go see her mom. We were on our way out when some old lady in a wheelchair gestured towards me and started calling me my mom's name. My mom's mom died in that nursing home, and it was likely one of her friends. And I look a lot like my mom, at least when she was my age, so I can see how she'd confuse us. I couldn't stop to talk to her because the nurses saw and told us we shouldn't. I had surgery recently. I remember having a dream while under anesthesia where I was lucid and knew that my dream body was not real and that my real body was on an operating table. In the dream, I was back in my apartment and my cap kept trying to jump up on me and I kept thinking, no, you can't jump on me because I'm actually on a table and you'll mess up the surgery. I have no memory of waking up during surgery and have no idea how I knew, but I remember feeling a lot of distress, that my cat was going to mess up my surgery. It's left me with a really bad, weird, creepy feeling even weeks later. My dad, my brother, and I were at a house with several outbuildings that my uncle had bought to fix up and sell. My uncle was showing us around. It was a very weird place. It had wainscoting over a door in the basement and a long tunnel running to the outside with metal teeth over the end. You could see sunlight through the tunnel. It was just so big enough for a small man to crawl through. On the main floor at the back was a room with a lock on the outside. The room's walls were covered in black plastic, no windows. The floor was painted blue with milk paint. I felt an immediate sense of foreboding and refused to stay in the room. My brother and I went and looked at the Quonset house that was one of the outbuildings. It must have been set up for a family member. Upon opening the door, we found the main room almost knee-deep in kids' toys. We walked towards the front where the kitchen was. There was no door, just a curtain. I immediately had an intrusive thought that told me that there was a family in there at a formica table with silver edges. The mother was cooking, and there was a man and 2 kids there. I completely felt that is what I would see. I could see that the table and kitchen were yellow. All of this in my head. I pulled the curtain, and of course, no one was there. But I had the kitchen correctly in my head. The entire layout was exactly what I thought it would be. My brother and I turned and left without speaking about it. About 10 years later, I brought it up to my brother about what I thought I'd see after opening the curtain. He said to me, "That's exactly what I thought I'd see too." Something bad happened at that house. I don't know what it was, but something bad happened. When I was in high school, my family and I lived in a loft above an insurance business downtown, and it was a smallish building. Small enough that there was only room for 1 apartment, so we were the only people living there. At the time, I would get up the earliest, so everything was pretty quiet aside from the usual car noises from outside. One Monday, I woke up to my alarm, and I thought I heard a jingling sound. I turned my alarm off and sat up in bed, listening for a few seconds before I heard it again. I couldn't think of an explanation. I didn't have anything with bells on it that I could think of. I looked under my bed and around my room to see if anything had fallen that would make a sound like that, but there was nothing. The setup of this apartment was weird. I had to walk through my little brother's room to get to my room, and so I walked through his room on my way out to the living room and kitchen. My brother was still sound asleep, and I didn't see any toys around that would jingle like that. Upon entering the living room, I immediately noticed that the laundry room door was open. Not wide open, but cracked open, enough to make it obvious. We always kept that door closed unless we were in there doing laundry. I looked around and didn't see anything out of place. When I got back from school, I asked my parents and brother if they had left the laundry room door open, and they claimed not to. On Tuesday, everything was normal, but Wednesday the same exact scenario happened again. I woke up and heard unexplained jingling, and found the laundry room door cracked open again. Fast forward about a year later. My mom had moved the stove for the first time since we lived there, and we found cat toys underneath. Cat toys with bells in them that jingled, just like what I had heard before. When we initially moved in, my mom had found what appeared to be cat litter on the floor in the laundry room, and she had even heard a cat meowing at one point and looked everywhere, only to find nothing, and assumed that it must have come from outside. After piecing all of this together, though, we couldn't help but wonder if we had a ghost cat from a previous tenant living with us, batting at the jingle toys and going into the laundry room to use the litter box. The door was open just enough for a cat to fit through. It never happened again after those 2 days, though. Weird. I was on a volunteer fire department, and we were called out to a single vehicle rollover. There were 2 occupants in the vehicle, a guy and a girl, boyfriend and girlfriend, and the girl was very much dead when we got there. We waited with the guy on the tailgate of the vehicle until the ambulance arrived and stabilized him for transport to hospital. While we were waiting, he explained that they were sitting side by side, cuddling as they drove and sharing Mike and Ike's between each other's lips while kissing. The next day, the fire department had a debriefing meeting to check in on another after such a stressful event. This one guy starts explaining a recurring dream he had where the girl who died in the crash was trying to get his attention to explain what had happened, how they had a candy between their lips kissing. He didn't even know what Mike and Ike's were, but kind of explained that they were like candy Tic Tacs that were longer and started with the letter M. When one of us suggested Mike and Ike's, he exclaimed, "That's it! That's what you were trying to tell me." This freaked the hell out of me. The guy was on tragic duty for this call and was easily more than 500 yards from the scene of the accident. There were only 3 firefighters at the actual scene, I being one of them. Because the accident was late in the evening, we didn't debrief immediately after because everyone needed their sleep. There was no way Buddy could have known this intimate detail of the crash. It was all unexplainable and easily the eeriest things that I've ever experienced. A guy fishing with a fully dressed outfitted dummy. It was in Luray, Virginia, along the Shenandoah River, a pretty isolated area. We were walking our dogs and passed 2 guys at river's edge, fishing. Not that unusual, until I realized that one of the guys was in reality a dummy or mannequin, fully dressed in a fishing outfit. Its arms were out, rigid, holding a fishing pole. I totally freaked out internally, but kept telling myself I must be imagining it. I didn't say anything to my husband because I didn't want to draw the attention of what might be an absolute lunatic. As soon as we got past them, my husband, the most level-headed guy in the world, looked at me and asked if I'd seen the guy fishing with a dummy. Cue internal screaming. Still creeps me out to this day. I wasn't a sick kid or anything, but I remember one time when I was oldest 6 years old and sleep on the couch with a bucket sick, and I had a very detailed dream, probably inspired by the Page Master movie, but I was in a really old library with my father. He was looking for a new sci-fi book, and I felt drawn to a section with old-fashioned leather-bound books. I pulled one from the shelf and flipped through it. I went to put it back, but the void where I had drawn it from was pure black and a small white light could be seen. I stared and watched as the white light came closer and formed a tiny human shape. As it walked forward, I remember specifically the sounds, a needle being dropped on a tile floor, followed by a phone book being dropped on a wooden floor. The needle echoed, but the book did not. As the form got closer, the noise got louder too. When it reached the edge of the shelf, it was the same height as the books. I remember being terrified of it, so I ran. There were adults around me, but they heard and saw nothing. I screamed for my dad, but couldn't find him. When I looked back at what I was running from, it was now hunched over and had its legs nearly curled up to its chest as it tried to fit inside the library and reach out to me. I couldn't hear my screaming or anything, but the repeated needle and phone book. Pretty sure as it reached out to me, I woke up, vomited, and the world kept spinning even though I was awake. Couldn't hear anything but those damn sounds. I used my pillow to try and drown it out till I fell back asleep. This memory is super clear and the sounds are insanely specific. I was walking my dog one day in the park. The park is pretty big, with a lake and a part where the path leads through the woods. Me being a dumbass, I forgot it was getting dark early, but I decided to continue walking. My dog is pretty big and protective, so I felt safe enough. She was walking loose ahead of me, her collar has red lights on them, when we turned the corner through the woods. It was getting darker and darker, and even though I know the park like the back pocket, I turned on the flashlight on my phone. Anyway, a few minutes go by, just silence. Sounds of my footsteps and the wind in the trees, when my dog suddenly started growling. I stopped. She's standing a few feet away, just a ring of red lights staring at the trees. I call her, and she's by my side in a second. I don't know why, but I dismissed it as dumb doggy behavior, like smelling a rabbit or whatever, and keep walking. Very stupid, I know. So we keep walking, dog by my side, my flashlight in front of me. We turn another corner, and my dog's growling again. This time, I freak out a little and look around me with the flashlight. Nothing. It was just a minute of walking before the path led us back into the park. I could make a run for it, but I had this weird feeling. So I took a few steps forward and saw someone standing a little away on the path, just standing there, like they just appeared out of nothing. It was weird, and I immediately felt nauseous. My dog starts full on barking, growling, back hair standing up. She's a very social dog, even with complete strangers, so this had to be bad. Her barking kind of shocked me into moving. The moment I grabbed her to turn around to make a run for it, the figure stepped forward. I never ran so hard. I ran all the way back to the little bridge that connected the neighborhood to the park. My dog was still with me, thank God. The moment I got home, I called the local police and asked them to check it out. They didn't take it that seriously because nothing bad happened, but they sent a car over. They found nobody, of course. I slept badly that night, and it took me a while to walk there again, even in daylight. I was 6 or 7, for some reason still sleeping in my parents' bed. Recently, my friend's older brother told me about Slender Man because this was the time where he started blowing up, and I couldn't sleep because I was excited for the next day because it was our yearly family vacation, and I looked over at the end of the bed and I swore someone was standing there. I tried to ignore it, but then I also saw someone leaning over my father on the other side of the bed and began bawling. Still have no clue what I saw or WTF was happening in general that night. Some guy tried to kidnap me at a McDonald's in the Hamburg train station. It totally sucked. I was trapped, sitting at this booth while this guy who sat across from me told me he was going to follow me to my train and take me away to marry him in Ghana. I was totally alone. No one was going to come. I tried to tell him to leave, gave him the cold shoulder, told him to fuck off, told him I had friends meeting me there. I was scared he was going to follow me, so I stayed sitting in the seat with his evil, creepy fucking face staring at me for what felt like forever. Luckily, a policewoman came into the McDonald's asking about a backpack left outside. I jumped up and pointed at him and told her that this man is threatening to follow and kidnap me. She brought over 2 giant police officer dudes to give him a talk, and I hightailed it to my train. The weird part was that I was the most scared telling the police on the guy than I was the whole time the guy was making threats. While I was on the train, I kept thinking, what the hell just happened? So we live in a really wooded part of Texas. This was around 11 p.m., and my mom was having a laughing fit in the living room over something she saw on the internet or talking on the phone with a friend. I don't remember. Point is, when she laughs really hard, she has a sort of hoo-hoo-hoo laugh, but like in a laughing tone. I can't describe. Imagine that noise, but you're laughing, lol. Well, I walk past the living room into the kitchen, and as I do, I start mocking her, hoo-hoo-hoo. She gets annoyed and tells me to go away and continues on. I grabbed my car keys to grab a charger or something from my car, turn on my phone's flashlight, and go around the house to my car. It's completely dark, no light other than mine and no noises. I could hear my mom laughing inside, but it was sort of muffled. When I fucking hear it, I was at the front of my car, about to reach for the door, when, clear as fucking day, dude, hoo-hoo-hoo, I froze. I didn't know what to fucking do. I know it wasn't an echo because I heard it literally behind the car a few feet away from me. I didn't know if I should run, scream, or try to see what it was. I jumped in the car as quick as I could and locked the doors. I waited for about 20 minutes and ran straight back inside. I told my mom and she just scoffed at me. I honestly don't know what the fuck that was. I'm convinced something made that noise. It sounded human. I don't know, it wasn't an animal, and living in the woods for so long, I know it wasn't an owl. No other animal around here makes a noise like that.